Welcome to the Evanston Public Library's evening of discussion of climate change, sponsored by Wise Up and Evanston Public Library. We will be recording this, so please turn off your screens and mute yourself. After the presentation, you will get an email in the next couple days with the link to the YouTube video on the library's website. And we also would like to send you follow-up information, but don't want to do that without making sure we have your permission. So unless I hear from you, my name's Julie Rand. You received the Zoom link from me. Unless I hear from you, I will assume that you do want the follow-up information. So thank you all for coming, and I'm going to bow out and turn things over to Wise Up.
Thank you, Julie. My name is Linda Rockwell, and I'm the president of Wise Up, Aging with Attitude, which is the co-sponsor of tonight's program. So I'd like to welcome all the guests, and especially our Wise Up members, and also our esteemed panel members. Just a little bit about our organization. Wise Up was formerly known as North Shore Village and was founded in Evanston just over 10 years ago. We're a nonprofit member organization of older adults, and we're committed to helping one another live purposeful lives. So our members enjoy the benefits and also the responsibilities that come from being informed, inclusive, and involved in our communities. We're part of a national network of community organizations that are dedicated to redefining aging. So Wise Up is also a service organization in that we provide programs that can help alleviate the loneliness and isolation that sometimes, unfortunately, grows as we're growing older. And it was even a more urgent problem within the past year. Some of our in-person social events had included weekly dinners at area restaurants, outings to theater and musical performances, neighborhood circles to meet for coffee and dessert at one another's homes. But since COVID, our social programs include events like a weekly virtual happy hour, a memoir writing group, an online comedy store where the price of admission is one joke, and other fun events as our members offer ideas for programs. Education, wellness, staying current on issues such as climate change are other priorities of Wise Up. So we've offered educational programs and guest speakers on topics such as history of Chicago theater, advanced healthcare directives, and we've hosted area authors for a discussion of their books. We hold meditation and Qigong classes. There's a wonderful current events group that meets regularly and enjoys lively discussions, very lively discussions on the issues of the day. And we believe well-informed older adults make smart decisions that help them enjoy life to the fullest. Lastly, we're also a service organization in that we offer trained volunteers who help members with anything from transportation to doctor appointments, to picking up groceries, to watering the plants at home when someone's in rehab for a hip replacement. So we welcome older adults of every ethnic background and economic circumstance who live in the Chicago area communities we serve. Please check out the screen that will be posted on later in the program on your screen.
Not on.
With our website later. And we are very happy to collaborate with other organizations like the Evanston Library and others throughout the North Shore. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Wise Up member Irene Alkin, chair of the Climate Change Program Committee, who will be giving you more information about tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Linda, and welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be here tonight to introduce our program, Climate Crisis Here and Now. Many of us in Wise Up and in the Evanston community and neighboring communities are very concerned about climate change and what it means for the world that we are leaving our children and our grandchildren and all our nations and indeed the world's future generations. We originally named our program Climate Change Here and Now, but given scientists' more recent analyses and predictions, we chose the word crisis rather than change. Climate change has progressed much faster than scientists had thought it would, with ice caps melting, coral reefs disappearing, devastating fires, extreme weather events, and people in vulnerable populations more likely to suffer its health effects. We're fortunate to have in Evanston and also in surrounding communities, organizations who are taking the current situation very seriously and are working in various ways to help to mitigate the worst effects of climate change. Some of the Evanston groups are represented here tonight by our speakers. We have asked them not only to tell us what their organizations are doing, but also to suggest ways that we can work individually and as a community to help mitigate the worst effects of climate change. I would like to go on to introduce our moderator. We're very fortunate in getting Eleanor Revelle as our moderator tonight. She represents the 7th Ward on the Evanston City Council. Prior to joining the City Council, she served as president of Citizens Greener Evanston. She served in leadership positions in a broad range of other civic organizations, including as chair of the Evanston Community Foundation and as president of the Illinois League of Women Voters, and on the board of the National League of Women Voters, where she now chairs their climate change task force. This makes her the perfect person to moderate our program tonight, and I will now turn the program over to her.
Well, thank you, Irene, and it's a pleasure to be here with so many concerned residents to learn more about what we can all do to address the climate crisis. We're going to hear from first two people representing Citizens Greener Evanston, and I'll introduce them both and then turn the program over to them. So first, we're going to hear from Rachel Rosner, a lifelong Evanstonian, a climate reality leader, and the current president of Citizens Greener Evanston. Her background is in education, and her passion is connecting young people with nature and empowering youth activists. She and her daughter, Bella, were part of the team that organized last year's climate strike, which grew to be E-Town Sunrise, an activist group with over 50 members. Rachel serves on the ETHS Sustainability Committee and the Implementation Task Force for Evanston's Climate Action and Resilience Plan. A Leadership Evanston alum, Rachel is focused on the intersection between equity and sustainability. We're also going to hear from Hal Sprague, who's been an environmental attorney and policy advocate for the past 35 years. He has worked at the US EPA, for a large law firm, and as environmental counsel at Abbott Laboratories before joining the Center for Neighborhood Technology in Chicago in 2008. Hal was manager of water policy at CNT until early 2019. He's been working to advance climate action initiatives here in Evanston since 2005. He's been on the board of Citizens Greener Evanston since its inception and served a term as president before turning that role over to Rachel. And now I'll turn the program over to Rachel to tell us more about CGE and their efforts.
Can't hear.
Thank you so much, Eleanor and Wise Up Leadership and everybody who's in attendance tonight. I really want to take a moment to recognize what it means to show up for a program about the climate crisis with everything that's going on in the world these days. It's really, it's quite overwhelming to me at times as a parent and someone who loves kids and nature and justice. And what I find healing is to work to fix it in community and feel so fortunate to be surrounded by so many brilliant people doing this work in this town. So here we go. Working? Yes. All right. So I was struck by the title of this event, Here and Now, Climate Crisis Here and Now, because CGE is so focused on the here. And I borrowed from Bobby Kennedy about, our small actions rippling forth. And in the climate communication world, there's sort of a debate about how much to ask people to focus on their individual actions versus really pushing policy change. They say, the fossil fuel companies are laughing all the way to the bank as we're fretting about whether to rinse that peanut butter jar before we recycle it. And I think that our individual choices do have that ripple effect on our community and creating a cultural shift, which is critical to what we want to do. And similarly, what we can get done in Evanston, where we're more likely to really have an impact on our representatives, our aldermen, because it's such a small scale, could also ripple forth to national and global impacts, as we serve as a model. So at CGE, our mission is to make Evanston a more just, sustainable, and resilient community. We do this through advocacy with City Council, educating the public, and forming alliances with other organizations. And our current top priority is the implementation of CARP, Evanston's historic climate action and resilience plan, with a focus on equity. Why equity, some might say? This is supposed to be about sustainability, and I found this Sierra article incredibly helpful in helping me grapple with that question. And this quote, "You can't have climate change without sacrifice zones." Think about New Orleans, places that are too underwater or too hot to live in. You can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people, and you can't have disposable people without racism. As with COVID-19, Black and Brown people are most gravely impacted by the impacts of climate change, such as extreme heat, flooding, and food insecurity. And centering equity is also a guiding principle of CARP. And at CGE, we're really aware that the environmental movement is a historically white movement. CGE is a almost all white organization, and we're really starting to do the work of introspection and understanding what we need to do to be truly inclusive organization. So we're an umbrella group for several organizations and committees, some of which you'll be hearing from tonight, but I want to mention those that aren't represented. Watershed Collective is about green infrastructure and flood mitigation, stormwater runoff, a bunch of brilliant people doing great things there. Edible Evanston is about garden education, and they facilitated the donation of 1,300 pounds of produce from Evanston gardeners to food pantries this year, and are looking at a partnership with Evanston Fight for Black Lives to start a community garden on the west end of the city in the Black neighborhood and hire young people to grow and sell food there. And our Energy and Climate Committee is all about renewable energy as well as energy efficiency. And I think the rest you'll be hearing from in other areas. So a few big wins of CGE. CARP itself really wouldn't exist were it not for CGE. And it's truly historic. Evanston is the first city in Illinois and the 100th in the nation to pass such an ambitious plan, to pass such a plan at all, really. You may not know, Evanston is certified wildlife habitat. People at Natural Habitat Evanston worked hard to get enough individual gardens and school gardens certified to meet the criteria from the National Wildlife Federation that the whole city is now certified, which I think is amazing. And a recent big win is that Environmental Justice Evanston passed a resolution at the city, which they're now working on turning into a series of ordinances to give it more teeth. And that was spawned by the fact that we have a waste transfer station in the 5th Ward, which is a lower income Black neighborhood. And we know that would not exist in a more affluent neighborhood in our town. So as the climate crisis emerges, that resolution will have great importance. I'm proud of this partnership we have with Trajectory Energy and Evanston Community Foundation. And I signed up as a community solar customer because my house isn't suitable for solar panels. And so for every new subscription to community solar, Trajectory donates $75 to Evanston Community Foundation's Rapid Response Fund, which is all about COVID impacted organizations. And they currently have a matching grant, so that doubles the 75 to 150. Natural Habitat won a grant from the Illinois Clean Energy Foundation recently. That's a 3-to-1 matching grant to restore habitat along the channel. So if you were to give $10, that would become $40. And additionally, they match volunteer hours. And habitat restoration, as well as mature trees, are really essential when we think about climate mitigation, sequestering carbon, those native plants, and of course the trees sequester carbon, and the native plants have deep tap roots that do so, and also cleaning the air and cooling the air and creating habitat to support biodiversity. And also through Natural Habitat Evanston, you can order for $10 one of these plaques that's a pollinator pledge that supports naturalized landscaping and reducing mowing and leaf blowing. And so it's all the same concept. So beyond that, I want to urge you all to make sure you're really paying attention to the upcoming elections, make sure that our mayor and city council have a plan to implement CARP and really have a grasp on all of its aspects. Also, make calls to the governor and your representatives and the speaker about the Clean Energy Jobs Act on the state level. That will facilitate CARP implementation, and it's also truly a climate justice initiative. And if you only make 2 sustainability choices, I'm a fan of Project Drawdown that has ranked the top 100 climate solutions, and at some are very policy oriented, but among the top 2 that you could do personally are reducing food waste, which you'll be hearing more about later, but we throw away 40% of the food we grow in this country while people go hungry, and adopting a plant-rich diet. And so that's, just want to encourage you to get involved with CGE, however it feels appropriate to you. For sure, visit our website, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on social media. And if you're in a position to do so, financial donation would be greatly appreciated. We're looking at hiring our first executive director, which will really usher us into a new phase as an organization. So I'm very excited about that. And without further ado, I will pass it to Hal Sprague, who's going to give you a little bit of context, historical context, and kind of municipal, I think, context for CGE and its operations.
Thank you, Rachel. And I want to thank Wise Up for inviting me to be here tonight. And I'm going to leave you with one message. I want you to focus on this. Rachel just went through a number of programs and projects and initiatives that Citizens Greener Evanston has been involved in since its inception and before it was even called Citizens Greener Evanston. But I think that, you know, as I was watching all of those slides with each one of them with an icon or a picture depicting some kind of a project that CGE and its sub-programs are working on, each one of those pictures could have been replaced by a photograph of a person, because they all came about because of people like Eleanor and like Bea and like Rachel and like Claire Talon-Ruin. These things are all generated by individual people's efforts. And I'll go back to the beginning of time here, not even before CGE, and just sort of repeat this. But just to go back a little bit further in time to give you the context of history, and this isn't even the beginning, but it kind of almost in the middle of the discussion of climate change, in 1997, there was this international treaty called the Kyoto Protocol, which eventually turned into something which, even though the United States was pulled itself out of the international treaty, there were people who said no to that. There were people, including, for example, the mayor of Seattle, who said, even though the United States isn't going to do this as a policy matter, the city of Seattle is going to do that. The mayor of Seattle, Greg Nichols, said, we are going to do it on our own. We're going to do it here. And he called on all the mayors across the country to do this at the local level, because the United States had pulled out of this agreement. And as a result of that, somebody in Evanston, a man named Steve Perkins, who started many environmental initiatives in Evanston, which eventually became Citizens Greener Evanston. Steve was the person who got us all together and got us aimed at promoting the adoption of the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement in Evanston, which happened in 2006. When that led to the very first Climate Action Plan in Evanston, 2008. And so there was then a group of us working with Steve, and we eventually met the original Kyoto goals in Evanston with the Climate Action Plan, largely based on our aggregation program. But nonetheless, all of this was a bunch of people who got together, individuals who worked really hard. We met monthly. There was a lot of remaking of ourselves and renaming of ourselves. And but we persevered and we succeeded as individuals. And there was a second phase of the Climate Action Plan, which was called the Evanston Livability Plan, which strengthened the goals of the original Climate Action Plan, made the goals higher for the reduction of greenhouse gases. And then finally, in 2018, the city adopted what is currently known as CARP, or the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan. And all through these processes, there were people at the city level. There was the mayor, Liz Tisdall, and there were the city managers, Julia Carroll, people who individually needed to be supportive of all these things. And there were people in the community who were promoting these things. People like yourselves, those of you, all of you who are out there listening, need to be part of this picture. And you have a voice and you have the ability to join together with us and make these things happen, because elected officials and appointed officials and hired officials react to what the community wants to do, either individually or as groups. This is the cover of the current Climate Action Resiliency Plan. I'm not going to spend any time on it. Rachel already talked about it, but the goal of this is extremely aggressive. We want to be carbon neutral by 2050. There's a lot to do to get us there, and it's going to be tough. And I'm just going to show you a couple more slides, because this sort of gives you an idea, if you're not already familiar with the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan, how we begin to measure, to describe what we're trying to do. And so, for example, we break down our greenhouse gases into these different factions. Where do they come from? They come from buildings, they come from transportation, and different sources. They come from waste. And that's, so I'm not going to explain any of that, but here's what the internal parts of the CARP tell us. They break these strategies and topics into these topics of work, of action items. And people are behind each one of these things. We have leaders in each one of these areas, and many of them are on this call tonight. I'd love to be able to show you pictures and introduce them. But in each one of these areas, we have people who have either been experts or made themselves experts in these areas and are working hard to create initiatives and move this thing forward. And that's all I have to say. So, but I encourage all of you to think of yourselves as part of the team and volunteer and become a member of CG or Wise Up or any of these organizations that are working on this. And we can really use your help, because it's a heavy lift, as they say, but I know we can do it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to Rachel and to Hal for outlining the really important role of all of us as individuals to help advance the effort to fight climate change. So greatly appreciate that. We're going to hear now from two people who are going to zero in on a couple of special areas of things that we can do. Let me just get my thing here. So first we're going to hear from Bea Etzveria, who moved here from Barcelona, Spain 4 years ago with her husband and 3 kids. And since then, she's been working on several sustainability related initiatives. These include co-founding a district-wide green team and achieving the introduction of composting programs at over 8 District 65 schools. She worked on the environmental justice resolution that was approved in September of this last year by the City Council. And she created and is running Evanston's Repair Clinic. She's been doing that since spring of 2018. Bea is also a member of CGE, and she leads its Beyond Waste group, which focuses on bringing awareness about waste reduction strategies to Evanstonians. And then we'll hear from Vicki Jacobson, the co-founder and co-director of Go Evanston, an advocacy organization dedicated to making Evanston streets safe and efficient for all users, regardless of age, ability, income, or mode of travel. Vicki is a professional urban planner with 15 years of experience consulting for urban transportation systems. She is passionate about cities and the diversity of the people who bring them to life. Vicki was a co-author of Evanston's Climate Action and Resilience Plan, which was adopted unanimously by the City Council in December 2018. She believes the role of every adult should be focused on creating sustainable and equitable places for the next generation. So Bea, I'll turn it over to you next.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Thank you, Vicki. And thank you, Wise Up, for getting us all here together. And thank you also to all the members, all the people that are in this call. And I'm happy to see that there's some of the repair clinic volunteers and some people that are in the environmental scene, to give it just a name. And what I want to talk about is what Beyond Waste does in Citizens Greener Evanston. The name Beyond Waste is because we have to go beyond waste, in the sense of understand that we have to understand that our waste has to be diverted in the right ways, but it also has to be reduced. And by reducing waste, the best way to reduce waste is to not generate it at all. So that's kind of like why it's called Beyond Waste. So we don't only, Vicki, if you can go to the other slide, please. For example, one of our tasks is to educate, to make people understand the importance, as Rachel was saying, of individual action, but also collective actions, to also press our governments and to educate ourselves and our communities and our neighbors into how to reduce, reuse, and recycle. And also understand that it goes beyond that. It's not only what we do once we have the stuff at home, it's what we do to not even get it to be in our home, right? Another thing that we do is build community. In this case, it's done through the Evanston Repair Clinic, but we believe that anything that brings people together with a common goal, in this sense, to take care of the environment, but also to empower the members of the community, is a way of building community and building resilience, which is one of the goals in CARP. That's why it's called the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, because we have to become resilient. And becoming resilient really means that we understand that we're interconnected as neighbors, so we interdepend on each other. That's really what a community is. It's not as much a group of like-minded or people that look alike. It's a group of people that depend on each other. So that's what kind of like what the Evanston Repair Clinic is really all about. It's neighbor helping neighbor. Is I have the skills and the time and the will to help other people learn how to fix their stuff, so they don't have to come back to their repair clinic, or they come back as volunteers, or maybe they always come back because they don't have the time or the tools at home. But maybe that gets me thinking into what can I do to make these people have access to the tools. So maybe the next step would be something like a tool library, right? Or a library of things. So again, building community, there's always like a virtuous circle of nature, community, health, and resource. So when we say one thing and when we enhance one of those things, usually it just helps the whole circle. So if we do get something like the Evanston Repair Clinic, or if we could get something like a tool library, if we could get something like a, let's say, a time bank, which is where you share your skills and in exchange of a credit that you can then exchange for something else, you're benefiting your community, you're helping people save money, you're saving money yourself, you don't feel as lonely because you are meeting other people and you're helping them, so that makes you feel better. You understand what the needs of the community are. So it's, again, all tied together, and usually you help the environment because you save things from going to the landfill, right? So that's the part of building community, which, as you can see, I'm very passionate about. And also because I get really mad when they say that you have to take your phone to a Genius bar. No way. I mean, you could take a, yeah, you if you have the right tools and you have access to internet, you can fix your phone. Really, you can change your screen. I mean, really. Or if not, maybe your grandchild can, but I mean, it's possible, it's feasible to do at home. We don't need geniuses to do that. That's what they make us think, and that upsets me. Another thing that we do is to, as Rachel was saying, track about the intersection of waste with other issues. So for example, what about single-use items? Why, as one person posted in the chat, what about them, right? Well, right now in Evanston and in the world in general, they're here to stay for a while, and legislation is not helping. We've been in Springfield trying to push for the COVID restrictions to not mention that items have to be single use, for example, bags in supermarkets, because that has not been shown as evidence that it's necessary, but it wasn't even considered. So there's lobbies that want that to still be there, because of course plastic is important, but also it's a matter of convenience, and it's also a matter of how mature a community is to get rid of things, how mature a community is to use recyclable items that can be, that there's like an organization that can clean them and have them move around as takeout containers. So there's a lot of issues going on at the same time. Another question would be like, where's my waste going, right? Some people just care about their waste. Oh, as long as Evanston waste is being recycled and it's being thrown in the right place, I'm happy. Okay, maybe we have to think, see the broader picture. What is the connection of waste and environmental justice? Where are usually the landfills located at? Where does our e-waste go to? What happens to the clothing we throw away, right? How does that look at a local level? As we were saying before, the waste transfer station. It's true that it's not Evanston waste, but so what? There's people that live right next to it. They have to bear the smell, they have to bear the pests, they have to bear potentially very hazardous products that right now Environmental Justice Evanston and the city, they're working on seeing how that can be tackled. But why do people have to suffer that? And why is it always the same people that have to bear the burdens of environmental issues, right? So that's also something that has to do with something as innocent as waste, right? Again, what happens to recycling? We're very happy when we see our big bin full of recycling, but not everybody knows that countries like China decided a couple of years ago to not take, let's say, global North European and American recyclings because they were so contaminated. They couldn't be called recyclables anymore. So what's happening with that? Is it being burned? Is it being buried? What's happening with that? And again, why is recycling really relevant? Or should we just understand that we should just, as we were saying before, try to not even go into recycling, trying to reduce? How can we get our governments, how can we get the local government to buy into that idea? How can we press for that to happen in a constructive way? And then kind of segueing into this is the CARP zero waste strategy. All of these questions could be solved if we would really tackle the strategy, the zero waste strategy that CARP proposes. But we're if you can go into the next slide, I'm sorry, Vicki. We are very, very far away from that. So here's, you're going to see another time, you have to do it twice, I'm sorry. This is the executive summary for the Zero Waste Working Group report that has just been, handed to the Evanston Environmental Board. And as you can see, 80% of waste in Evanston ends up in landfill in Evanston, right? Aren't we so green? Well, maybe not as green as we thought. Commercial entities only recycle 10%. And it seems like they don't know or they don't care that the first tote they could get would be free. So either they don't know, they don't mind, they don't have the sensibility for recycling. It's just not happening. And as Rachel was saying before, 35% or 40% is going of food and yard waste is going into, it makes, 35% of our landfill is composed of food and yard waste, which could potentially be composted. And that's wonderful because it would become soil again. It would, it just would prevent gases from going into the atmosphere. It would become soil again, and it would become a livelihood for a lot of people. So again, that virtual circle, right? So that's one of the things that we're pushing for, to see if we can start follow the work of the Zero Waste Working Group and create a group of residents and of informed residents and experts to start to tackle a way to create a strategy to work on this strategy that would have as main objectives the reducing food waste and tackling recycling, particularly for actually residential and commercial. Those are the two most important things that we would really want to work on, because as you can see, our immediate goal is to reach our 50% diversion rate by 2025 from where we were in 2017, and we are not even close to there. So we must press to have legislation, we must press to have policies in place, and we must make this kind of like good intention into reality and into hard work and into the ways in which this can be done. And if we can go on to the next slide.
And then and if you could wrap up, Bea.
Yeah,
for-
I'm done. And this is just
Okay.
a list of resources for you to take a look at. One of the things that I do want to mention is the last one, the circular economy. So what happens when a city wants to go into really understand zero waste? It understands that the way to go is circular, meaning that none of the resources that enter a system leave as a resource, as waste. They're always a byproduct for some, like a resource for something else. So please look into these resources. I'm going to share them right now, and they will be also shared on the email that you will be receiving. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Bea. So Vicky, do you want to jump in now?
Mute.
You're
Working on
muted.
it. Okay, I found all the buttons. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I'm just smiling during this whole presentation. I mean, as grave as this issue is, it's just so inspiring to hear all the passion. These are not just topics like that we work on. You can feel and hear the passion in everyone's presentations. And when we were given 7 or so minutes to introduce these things, we all were like, wait, I could talk about this stuff for an hour. So Eleanor, you'll have to rein me in as well, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly, the cane. Yes, my name is Vicki Jacobson. I'm one of the co-founders of Go Evanston. I believe one of my co-founders is here on the call tonight, Barbara Jane Miller, who is a very close colleague of mine in this work. We are a group that, as Eleanor described, we want to expand mobility and travel options for everyone in Evanston, regardless of age, ability, income, race, gender, or mode of travel. There are a lot of reasons why we want to do this work, and they're lined up very closely with the Climate Action and Resilience Plan goals. Okay, now if I can advance my screen. Doesn't appear that I can do. Okay, there we go. So yes, briefly, and Hal went over this a little bit, but what does bicycling and walking have to do with climate change? The transportation sector accounts nationally for about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. In Evanston, that number runs a little low, in part because our data on it isn't fantastic at the local level. It's expensive data to collect. We also do have a very good development pattern to support walking and bicycling. We have a fairly complete sidewalk network. We have access to 2 transit systems, a fairly dense and tight-knit community. So we do have a reduced portion of our greenhouse gas emissions from transportation and mobility, but there's always room for progress. The CARP, the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, Transportation and Mobility Goals, focus on reducing the vehicle miles traveled. So a large percentage of the greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector are from private automobiles. So the idea is, how can we support a lifestyle where you don't need to get in a car to do everything? And while we're not getting in the car. We want to be increasing the trips made by walking, bicycling, and on transit. Another major goal of the CARP plan is to support the transition to electric vehicles and electrification in general. This is something that is largely going to be fulfilled by the private sector and be market driven, but the city is working on developing the infrastructure to make these modes feasible and to the extent that they can be made affordable as well. So when it comes to enacting change in the mobility sector in Evanston, a lot of it has to do with plans that we've already made. There are a lot of plans in place in the city of Evanston that are related to supporting active modes of transportation. Even our public health plan, for example, talks about the many health benefits associated with these modes of travel. We have a bicycle plan, we have a multimodal plan, we have a complete streets policy. So Evanston staff and city has done a ton of work on this topic, and now we're in the process of putting all of this into action. Another major piece of making mobility more climate friendly is behavior change. So how do we get people to change their habits and maybe choose to live in a location where they could live without a car, or a family could live with one car instead of two cars? So part of that is education. And one of the things that Go Evanston, our group, is passionate about is fostering healthy transportation habits in children. We see this not only as a benefit for raising the next generation of climate-friendly travelers, but there are also many other benefits associated with walking and bicycling among children. There's also an obesity epidemic happening in our country among children, and active transportation modes are associated with reductions in childhood obesity. And then one thing that we can all do every day is make choices about the way we travel. You know, when we have time and interest, we can choose to take the bus or the train to a location rather than getting in our car, and often experience life in a different way, walking and bicycling places. And COVID has put a lot of this on the table as well. A lot of people had more time to travel and chose different modes during the pandemic. And we hope that this is a moment of opportunity where people may be changing their habits permanently because of the other many benefits associated with these modes. So I mentioned that Evanston doesn't have great data. I mean, measuring, we call this mode share, the amount of people who are traveling in a car, a bicycle, a carpool, walking, is expensive data to collect, and it's kind of hard to get. So it's a challenge among many local municipalities on how to measure this progress. We are fortunate in Evanston and in this region to be a part of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, which does provide this mobility data for its constituents. And Evanston is well positioned. We have a fair amount of bicycle infrastructure, but measuring progress accurately requires more data collection. And then finally, the way that we get the most excited about getting involved in Evanston is when projects come up for implementation in the city, and we've got the chance to engage as members of the public. And also, so that's attending public meetings. And during the pandemic, public meetings have often happened virtually, and in some cases expanded the number of people who participate, which is kind of an exciting and unexpected benefit of virtual engagement strategies. But this is something that we think is really important to support our elected officials and our city staff in getting these projects actually built. And Evanston happens to have three really important infrastructure projects happening right now. One is Church Street between Dodge Avenue and McDaniel near the high school. Another project is Oakton Street, and I wish I could, I don't know if I can point, if you can see my cursor, this is Church Street here. We have Oakton Street between Asbury and McCormick. And Chicago, the southern portion of Chicago Avenue is also being studied right now. And all of these projects have the goal of improving walking, bicycling, and transit access as a priority. And that often means also calming down traffic. Speed management is a major issue on some of these roadways and a major threat to these vulnerable modes of walking and bicycling. So that will be addressed as part of these projects as well. So as I said, oh boy, these are not in the right order. I'm just going to click through them all. Transportation and mobility is kind of a big wheel. You know, some of the progress towards reaching our goals involves large scale and expensive projects that only happen once in a while. So when we have the moments of opportunity to participate in influencing those projects, that's really important. And as I've started to reference, transportation and mobility is the nexus of many important topics. Not only is it related to climate change, it is absolutely an equity issue. And we've seen that more often, and we've seen that more than ever during COVID, when essential workers are still needing to get from their home to their jobs on potentially dangerous modes, but transit's actually gotten a pretty good rating actually in terms of COVID, and that's good news. It's a public health issue in terms of active transportation. It's an economic development issue in terms of it connecting people to jobs. It's a major topic of conversation at AARP and Aging in Place initiatives, where you can promote livability and mobility among people without requiring the use of a private automobile. And it's also an important issue for schools and children and promoting healthy habits and independent children. So all of this speaks to end livability. I'm passionate that a walk can solve many problems. And during the pandemic, when everyone felt cooped up in their house, getting outside for a walk can change your perspective on just about anything. So that's my personal passion. And yes, Go Evanston is the advocacy organization that we founded to support these efforts in Evanston. Anybody can do what we're doing, and you can join us if you'd like to. We'd love to have you. We focus our efforts on education, engagement in public processes, encouraging people through events and fun challenges. We've had bike rodeos for children. We absolutely are committed to an equity lens with a focus on accessibility. And we have played a larger role than we expected in supporting and bridging gaps between staff, elected officials, and residents. And that's been a real eye-opening experience, that if we can understand both sides, we've been able to support solutions and negotiate solutions that everyone supports. So with that, I'll say thank you and pass the
Thank you,
mic.
Vicki. Thanks. That's great. Okay. Well, a lot of good information there as well. And now we're going to hear from two really super active ETHS students, really amazing climate activists, and they're going to tell us a lot about what they're up to. We're going to hear from Sarika Weicker and Mia Houseworth. They are co-founders of E-Town Sunrise. They're the student board members for Citizens Greener Evanston. They're co-leaders of the Climate Action Committee at ETHS, and they're co-chairs of a new sustainability committee that's going to be under the Board of Education. So their passion for environmental activism stems from their desire to bring awareness of the climate crisis and promote a sustainable future for ETHS. They are working towards implementing CARP's goals at ETHS and building a multi-generational community dedicated to this issue. So thank you both so much for being here. I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Yeah, thank you, Eleanor. And also thank you to Wise Up for having us. We are really excited. All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so hi everyone, my name is Mia Houseworth. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at Evanston Township High School. So throughout these past few years, we have seen a sharp increase in climate activism around the student body, and Evanston Township High School, or I'm going to abbreviate it to ETHS, has begun to increase sustainable solutions within the school to follow the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. And personally, I have seen an increase in environmental clubs around ETHS, as well as a conversation about the intersectionality of climate activism.
Great, thanks, Mia. My name is Sarah Kowalker. I'm also a senior at ETHS, and I use she, her pronouns. Tonight, we'd love to tell you about some of the groups we are part of, both within the school and community. Just to give you a little heads up, the order will be as follows. We're going to start with the ETHS Sustainability Committee, then E-Town Sunrise, a little bit about Citizens Greener Evanston, which I know has been touched on a lot, Climate Action Committee, Tree Plenish, Evanston's Youth Pledge, and finally, what you can do as the broader Evanston community. You may or may not have heard of any one of these before, but we're just going to give you a bit of a more in-depth description of each. So starting with the Sustainability Committee, Mia and I co-founded this in May 2019, along with another senior named Louise Bond, and have continued to work virtually over this past year since March. Us three co-founders were able to get this committee convened by our principal in the fall of 2019 to really hold ETHS accountable for sustainability. We hold monthly meetings with fellow environmentally conscious students, teachers, administration, and adults in the community. Currently, our primary focus is on helping ETHS's sustainability consultant, Mr. Campbell, create an official sustainability plan for the school to follow. I personally am a student member on the Waste Subcommittee, which is one of three. There's also Curriculum and Energy. One of our more notable accomplishments as the Waste Subcommittee has been getting composting in the South Study Cafe, which is a student cafeteria, along with the Terrace, which is the staff cafeteria. We were even recognized by the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition for commitment to diverting waste, so that was really exciting. And we also work on other related issues and are currently focusing on waste awareness when we get back to school.
Yeah, so along with the waste subcommittee, we have a curriculum subcommittee, and I'm really excited to work closely with the curriculum committee because I think educating students about the climate crisis is a great step towards mitigating climate change. And curriculum is in the beginning stages of creating a film for the student body to view. And the film is going to give a brief overview of what the climate crisis is and we're hoping to have it on the ETHS website so students can access it anytime they want. And following the film, we're hoping to have a short discussion with students about what they can do to prevent climate change and also what steps to take further. And in addition to this, we're also working on distributing a survey to faculty and students to learn more about how much the climate crisis has been taught in our school. And then we also have the energy subcommittee, and they have some really cool ideas that are circulating right now. And Jacob Brodsky, who is another senior at ETHS, is working with the subcommittee right now. And energy is figuring out the logistics to build solar panels on school grounds, which is very exciting, and exploring options for energy efficiency. And this project is also in the beginning stages.
Great, yeah. So the next organization we'd like to tell you a little more about, which I think has been touched on a little bit, but it's E-Town Sunrise. It's a non-school affiliated organization that primarily focuses on civil disobedience, policy change, and creativity. We are Evanston's chapter of the National Sunrise Movement, which is pushing for the Green New Deal and other political activism at the intersection of environmental issues. So E-Town Sunrise has held 2 climate strikes, pre-COVID, of course. They're pictured here. The first one was on September 20th, 2019, and drew hundreds of students, all unified around the common interest of making ETHS more environmentally conscious. Our main demands throughout the strikes were to mandate environmental education within the school and for ETHS to visibly commit more to the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. Another large aspect of E-Town Sunrise is collaborating with others in the school and community. So for instance, we worked with the Student Union, as well as Students Organized Against Racism, which are both ETHS clubs. And we collaborated with them on the strike, as well as other initiatives to get their input and diversity of perspective. Sunrise has also worked with Northwestern in the past, which has been a really, really great partnership. Sunrise has also amassed a following of over 800 people on Instagram, which is super fun. I put the handle here in green if you'd like to follow it. We've got a creative social media team that has some great talented creators from our school. Members of E-Town Sunrise banded together last year and made a public comment to the school board. And one of our members made a really great video filming it, documenting it, which is just an example of the great culture and dedication of the individuals in this organization. And as for during COVID, Sunrise has had some virtual meetings open to any student who wants to come, and has been utilizing the national movement's resources. So for example, their political education virtual training has been a really great resource. And Sunrise's main goal right now is working at the intersection of climate issues and racial justice. So for example, partnering with local organizations like Evanston Fight for Black Lives, among others. In July, Sunrise partnered with this organization for a chalk out, which you may have heard of or seen. People met in Fountain Square and drew with chalk to write their demands on Evanston's concrete. So that was a really great event. And Sunrise is currently working on partnering with Evanston Fight for Black Lives for a virtual town hall of sorts, of just a community discussion of Evanston's environmental issues.
All right, so next I'm going to talk about Citizen Screener Evanston, which has been touched on. And Starka and I have been a part of CGE for almost 2 years now. And CGE has been a really great resource when it comes to understanding the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, as well as connecting us to environmental resources around the community. And when E-Town Sunrise was planning for their first ever strike, publicity was a very big concern of ours, and we wanted to reach as many students as possible. So CGE was kind enough to provide funds for pins that say Climate Action Now, and we distributed them to as many students as we could. And another great thing is that a few CGE folks joined the Sustainability Committee when it was first started, and we didn't have too many people on the committee, so it was really nice to have experienced people working with us. And we got a lot of work done within the first year, which was very exciting. And at the CGE monthly meeting, Sark and I usually talk about what ETHS is doing to follow the Climate Action Resilience Plan and steps that we need to do further.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the Climate Action Committee next, which is one of several committees under the Community Service Club within ETHS. So as you can imagine, we're very service and project oriented. Mia and I are co-chairs along with 2 other seniors, Izzy Basso and Claire Luchek. Our Instagram here in the green documents a lot of our service events, virtual meeting announcements, pretty much everything we do. So if you want to follow it. And for now, I'm going to show you some of our past events through some pictures so you can join me on this little visible journey. So first, our beach cleanups. Between multiple cleanup events at Clark Street Beach, which is Evanston's huge beach right by Northwestern, between fall of 2019 and early 2020, we were able to collect around 230 pounds of trash and recycling, which our club sponsor measured with the scale to track our progress. We've even drawn up to 40 people for these cleanups, which just shows Evanston's youth involvement with really wanting to keep the city clean. And next, in February of last year, we hosted a fundraiser for Wildlife Warriors, which provided relief for animals in Australia affected by the invasive wildfires. We were able to set up a little makeshift photo booth in our main lobby and advertise to students about the cause, who then came down to donate, and they got to take fun, they got to take pictures. We raised over $300 in just the one day that we were able to set up the booth, which was pretty remarkable. And another event we have done is Forest Preserve Workdays, where students help clear invasive species. And Evanston is lucky enough to be super close to so many great forest preserves. So we worked at Somi Woods, Harms Woods, and back when we were in person, this was a really great way to get community service hours, which increased interest among students while engaging them in some hands-on environmental action. Next, we've also done some more artistic projects in the past. So on the left here are some of our club members making coffee cup collection boxes for a display we made that educates students on how wasteful single-use cups are. Currently, we're planning a neighborhood cleanup where students go out on their own in their own neighborhoods to pick up trash and recycling, and then return for an educational Zoom with Mary Allen of the Solid Waste Agency of Cook County for a discussion on the need and call for waste reduction in the community. And finally, in September and October of 2020, we were able to host Edible Acre Workdays, which is a garden on ETHS's campus. We enjoyed the warm weather, lots of community engagement, and we helped recycle old plants for next year's nutrients. And at the end, volunteers even got to make little bouquets from the leftover flowers. So it was a really successful event and fostered some safe in-person connection while doing really important work.
Yeah, it's so fun to be a part of the Climate Action Committee and being connected to all those environmental resources. And next is Tree Plenish, and this is a new project that Sark and I started working on with a sophomore named Maggie Finneran. And this is a large organization that works with schools from around the country, and ETHS was chosen to be one of the hubs, which was really cool. And so we found how many sheets of paper ETHS used in the past full school year, which was 2.8 million sheets of paper. It's a lot. And we are going to replace that paper by planting 280 trees around the community. And this would only offset 50% of the paper that ETHS has used. So community members can request a tree through Tree Plenish, and then we plant it in their yard. And each tree only costs $4.30. So if you want one, I definitely recommend it. And you can choose the number and the type of tree that you would like. So the types of trees are quaking aspen, red maple, and eastern redwood. And Max Bike and Goods is our sponsor, so thank you to them. And the event is going to be held on April 24th, but that could also change based on CDC guidelines. And during the event, volunteers will plant a tree in the form of a sapling at community members' homes who have requested them. And we'll be working with Leslie Shad, who is a leader at Natural Habitat Evanston, to make sure that the trees can flourish in their new homes. So next is Evanston's Youth Pledge, and Sarah and I are working with Jacob Brodsky and Lily Aaron, who are ETHS students, and Tony Inorn, who is a current Northwestern junior, to draft a pledge that will be sent out to all candidates, so like mayor and aldermen and women. And the pledge is just really a list of important things that we would like to see addressed in the community. And we are including ideas from Kumar Jensen, who is Evanston's Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer, and experts from around the community, as well as ideas from CARP. And some of our ideas, I listed them here. They include the Neighbors to Neighbors program, which is a community outreach program that emphasizes accessibility to marginalized Evanston residents. And we have also added community solar and the continual support for the equity initiative as items on our pledge. And we are also hoping to have student organizations from around the school sign off on the document for support. And these could be the Clean Water Club and Students Organized Against Racism, which are clubs at ETHS.
Great, yeah, and now for some ways that you can get involved. For our tree plenish mission, as Mia said, you can choose between the three types of trees to get planted in your yard, or better yet, if you're affiliated with an organization in Evanston or nearby that would like to plant multiple. I will include the link in the chat, but you can find our webpage really easily just by searching ETHS Tree Plenish, and you can request trees directly from there. We really need to reach our goal of 280 trees within the coming months. So if you're interested, definitely take part in that. And if you're interested in joining the Sustainability Committee, which is what we mentioned at the beginning, or one of the specific subcommittees, so to reiterate, there's waste, energy, and curriculum, please reach out to us. We're welcome to having more members for more diverse discussion and points of view. And thirdly, the Climate Action Committee. We'll be looking for new service events to have a small group come to volunteer at. So if you're interested in hosting any environmental related service with us, please let us know. However, as of now, we do not know the exact logistics and school protocol yet. Our school has not released that for when it's warmer out, but we would still love to hear of any opportunities. And lastly, you can pressure the local government to sign the Youth Pledge. It's still very much in the draft stages right now, but we will be sending it out to local officials in the coming weeks as we get closer to the mayoral election. And if you would also like to view the Youth Pledge and offer feedback, you're definitely open to that as well. And so Mia will share our context on the next slide.
Yeah, so we appreciate all of you listening to our mostly youth-led activities at our high school and with the broader community. We hope you got a sense of important work that is happening and how you can fit in somehow. So eTown Sunrise's Instagram is in green and the Climate Action Committee's Instagram is in blue. And both of our emails are below that. So please reach out to us if you have any comments or if you want to be a part of anything. We would love it.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. Do you have time to do any schoolwork? You're really busy there. There have been a few questions coming through in the chat, and if other people have, we have maybe 10 minutes for some questions. So if you want to submit them in the chat. And meanwhile, there are a couple of questions for our ETHS students. So for example, if someone doesn't have room in their garden for a tree, is there a way for them to donate to your Tree Plenish program and support trees for other residents?
Yeah, of course. We're going to put the link in the chat, but there is a donate button if you would like to donate to the cause. We would really appreciate that. That would be awesome.
Okay, great. And then another couple of questions. Do you connect with similar kinds of climate and environmental groups at other high schools? And in particular, this one person wanted to know if you were familiar with the group in Libertyville, the LEAF group, Libertyville Environmental Action group.
I personally am not familiar with that group, but I would definitely be interested in connecting with them and other high school groups.
Mm-hmm. Or do you reach out to any other high schools in the area normally, or you're pretty busy with ETHS?
I know for the sustainability committee, we look at other schools, what they're doing with sustainability, and get a lot of ideas from that. So definitely there. But we are definitely interested in looking at more schools to work with or see what they're doing. So if anyone has any suggestions, we're open to that as well.
Great, okay. So we've been hearing about a lot of great work happening at the high school. Do any of our other speakers have interaction with students from Northwestern? Is Northwestern connected with sort of the city resident activities? Do any of you have any experience with that? Rachel?
Well, we have a ex officio board member who's a graduate student at Kellogg, which is great. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, it's largely interviews from journalism majors. Okay. I know I've seen students at a few meetings, but we haven't secured one for the board, like an undergraduate yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There is a group there called Sustain NU, mm-hmm. But we've reached out to them, and there isn't much. And they have a staff person also at Northwestern, but we don't have a lot. I mean, CGE doesn't have a lot of interaction with them. It would be helpful. It would be good if we could.
There was an effort by some on our committee to make connections with students at Northwestern for this program, actually. And the impression was that they are mostly concerned about what happens on the Northwestern campus, that's where their efforts were going.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would point out one thing that we can sort of pat them on the back about, and that is that I work for a company that does, it puts in community solar farms, and Northwestern University has signed up to be to subscribe to the community solar, the large commercial section of all 16 sites that they plan to build. And I mean, they've taken up all the capacity that's offered to them by this company, and but even that is probably only a third or a quarter of their energy. But it's a huge investment of theirs, or of time, and an endorsement of community solar, and it's a really good thing that they're doing to set an example like that, I think.
Great. A question for Bea, because it's a question that I've heard from some of my residents who they read the stories about China, for example, turning away barge loads of recycled material, and they wonder, so is the material that I put in my recycling bin, is that really getting recycled, or is it just ending up in a landfill somewhere? Can you help us, reassure us about that?
Last I heard, when I visited the Elk Grove recycling facility, which was I would say 18 months ago, so that's a while ago. Evanston's recycling in particular was being used to lower the contamination rate of other recycling companies, meaning that the Elk Grove facility is so good at recycling that they can sell their stuff to companies that are not doing such a great job. But again, it really doesn't matter. I mean, if our recycling is going to a great place, wonderful, but what about the rest of the world? I think it's time for everybody to understand that local and global is basically the same thing. So that's my answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then there was a question early on that you did address a little bit, Bea, about plastic, single-use plastic. So what is Evanston making? Is that something that we're going to be working on soon, or?
I don't work for the city, so I don't really know like the intention. I know it's not the, it looks very, it's like blood. It's very scandalous. You see it and you get afraid. It's like, oh my God, so much single-use plastic. But for example, food waste is so much more important, right? So I understand the worry. I've seen like all the masks in the floor, and I've seen people use, single-use stuff, like there's no tomorrow, but that I know there's nothing happening yet. And I think that's something that it's probably more like a legislation thing for the city and even for the state level. It's not something that's gonna happen in the silo, I would say. Thank you.
And I think it is really somewhat tabled based on COVID right now, but I think the ban bag is being revisited. But yes, just drive that home again, that food waste and composting from a climate perspective are higher priorities.
Right, is where our effort should be going, right? Okay. Do any of our panelists have one last thought before we bring this to a close?
I think there's a question about if we have any advice for recent college graduates.
Okay.
In finding work. I don't, I'm sorry, but maybe others do.
Okay, anybody have advice for someone who wants to find a job in sort of the environmental arena?
Well, I would, having worked in the city of Chicago for a while, in one environmental organization and working shoulder to shoulder with several others, there are quite a few in Chicago. I would say if you can reach out to look it up online. I mean, I can help you identify some of them, but I can name just a few, like the Friends of the Chicago River, Sierra Club, NRDC, Center for Neighborhood Technology, Environmental Law and Policy Center, Open Lands. These groups all work together on water and energy issues, and almost all of them have internships. Some of those are not paid, but I think at the beginning of your career, you're going to have to figure out a way to do some internship work to get experience and learn the craft, learn the field without getting paid a lot for it, because those positions do exist, and it's a great way to learn. And when you do those things with one organization, at least when there isn't COVID to prevent it, we were going to offices, and those groups have meetings where the different interns from different groups meet each other and talk about their different jobs. So there's sort of a network of interns with these groups. So I would encourage that for the coming summer. Hopefully this next summer will be an opportunity for students to get involved in those kind of jobs and learn about the field.
Great. And someone just posted information about Collective Resource and its new program with sort of neighborhood totes. So if a family doesn't directly want to, be responsible for subscribing as an individual family, they can go in with their neighbors and get started on composting. So that Collective Resources is really an amazing local company. So, okay.
The other thing I was going to add about recent college graduates is there are so many roads into the environmental space, and there are so many skills that the field needs. So whether it's organizing people or ideas or data, measuring progress is an emerging field in the environmental sector that is really needed. I mean, all communities are trying to measure progress on this issue, and it's you know, the young minds applied towards information technology is a really exciting and new field that's emerging, and one that we need.
Great, thank you. Okay. Well, this has been a really energizing program. I really thank all of our presenters for all the great information and ideas you've had for us. Obviously, the climate crisis is real, it's urgent, and we've heard from you about ways each of us as individuals can be involved and be a part of the solution. And so our individual actions are meaningful. They can set an example for others, build awareness and inspire others to get you know, be active as well. And then our collective action is needed as well. And so you've heard from several organizations that give you an opportunity to get involved, and really encourage all of you to look for new ways that you can get involved and make a difference. The time is now, and the fight really needs all of us. So Irene.
Yes, I'd just like to make some concluding remarks. I'm very excited. I mean, this is exactly what we wanted. And I think the interchange, you know, I see this so much as an intergenerational issue. And the interchange I've just heard, even in the last few minutes, in terms of advice to some of the students in terms of ways that they can, you know, the whole thing with internships and so on seems so important. And I'm just very excited about what's happened with the program. And I want to thank all of you who helped make it such a success, our wonderful speakers and our moderator. And we did learn from the speakers about ways that we can become more involved, which was one of the things we really wanted to hear. And my guess is that Wise Up members will start getting more involved. I'd like to see that be a really important part of what we do. So that we have ideas from you that will be very helpful. I'd like to thank the Evanston Library for co-hosting this event, and Julie Rand for being our Zoom host. And I want to also thank a few others. I want to thank the wonderful Wise Up team I had working with me, Nancy Bashuk, Elizabeth Kinney, and Eleanor Taylor, and our always helpful Wise Up staff, Paula Cleve and Mary McCulloch, and of course, Linda Rockwell for starting us off. And we're also grateful for questions and interaction here, as I said. And the slide that is shown, it was supposed to be shown again now. The slide with, yes, the contact information for Wise Up for people who would like to learn more about our organization and what we've been doing. And for those of you who are not Wise Up members and are on this call, we'd like you to consider whether you might want to join us in our activities. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot more interaction with those of you who spoke tonight. So thank you all very much. Thank you, attendees, everybody who's on the call. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.